Today I'm bringing you a short video about a very frequent question I receive when I start to explain Python to my students. Now, why should I learn Python for Dynamo? I already have my Dynamo nodes. I already understand Dynamo. So why should I even open the Python node? Let's see. There are 3 reasons why you should be learning Python for Dynamo. 2 of them are constant, they won't change, and 1 is constantly changing. Let me explain. The first reason to use the Python node instead of Dynamo is because we're working with too many Revit elements, or with too much information, or with too much geometry. Why is that? Well, when we use the Python console, something funny happens. We are communicating directly with the computer, with the Revit program. Aren't we doing that exactly with Dynamo? Well, yes and no. We are communicating with the Revit project when we open Dynamo, but we are doing it through a veil, through Dynamo, which is another program. And this program encapsulates the object so that the user may manipulate them. So when we open the Python node, however, we are talking directly to the computer, and this saves us time and computer resources and makes our Dynamo script run much faster. So that's the first reason why we may want to use Python instead of Dynamo. Now, the second reason also won't change, and this is a quite simple one. Python is one of the most spoken scripting languages around the globe. So, well, last year it was the most used scripting language. Even ChatGPT speaks in Python. If you stare at it for a little while, you will see Python code running these scripts. So being one of the most used scripting languages has its advantages. And one of those advantages are the Python packages or the Python libraries. Now, the Python libraries, Python comes with many pre-installed libraries, but it has even more than those installed Python libraries, because you can program with NumPys, Pandas, the math library, or even use complex libraries for data visualization such as Seaborn. Now, these libraries open a world of possibilities that Dynamo couldn't possibly offer. So that's a very powerful reason to be using Dynamo. In fact, for instance, I will never use Dynamo for string manipulation because Python is so much easier when handling that type of data. But also with a massive amount of data, Python is super powerful there. So that's also a very important reason to be using Python instead of just the Dynamo nodes. And the third reason is always changing. Why is that? Because we use Python instead of the Dynamo nodes when some option of the Revit API is open for programmers but doesn't have its corresponding node. So I'm going to give you a super simple example here. For instance, some years ago, we weren't able to automatically model ceilings. Yes, objects as simple as ceilings weren't available to be programmed. So we really had to do a lot of roundabouts, like duplicating the ceilings, copying them. But once this was open in the Revit API and we could create a ceiling, it was first introduced for the Revit API users, and years after we had the corresponding Dynamo node. Now, in that impasse time, Python users could create ceilings, Dynamo users couldn't. So this is happening in many ways nowadays. The Dynamo team doesn't include everything from the Revit API inside Dynamo, so there's always an advantage when using the Revit API inside Python and inside Dynamo. One specific example where this happens a lot, like 5 times as much as in other disciplines, is MIP. Oh my god, for the simplest thing, for example, for modeling a pipe, you will need to go to the Revit API and to Python in order to program this. So always in my Dynamo Python Mastery, for those of you who use MIP, I always recommend never skipping the Python blocks. I really hope that you have found this video super useful. If you really want to start learning Python for Revit, check out this guide that I have right here on the channel. And of course, you can subscribe right here. See you on the next one. Bye bye.